Every Saturday before sunrise from 1955 to 1985, the same pot was set on the same stove in kitchens from El Paso to East LA. The same hands stirred it, in faded aprons, working from no recipe at all. Number 17 is the dish most Mexican-American grandchildren cannot reproduce today. Number 9 was made only when somebody had died. Number 3 is the breakfast Abuelo ate every single morning for 40 years and never once complained about. These 25 recipes were not restaurant Mexican. They were Sunday morning Mexican, parish hall Mexican, Abuela's cast iron Mexican, and most have quietly disappeared from American homes. Hit subscribe so they do not vanish completely. Here are the 25 lost Mexican-American recipes your grandparents once knew. Number 25, capirotada. This was the traditional bread pudding Abuela made during Lent, and every layer of it carried meaning. The bolillo bread, the piloncillo syrup, the raisins, the queso anejo, the cinnamon stick, the cloves. Each ingredient stood for a piece of the passion. She toasted the day-old bread in lard until it turned the color of caramel. She melted dark cones of piloncillo with water and a stick of canela from a Guerrero bag in the cupboard. Then she layered everything in a clay cazuela the way her own mother had layered it back in Zacatecas in the 1940s. The smell pulled the whole family to your kitchen table. What most people miss today is that the layering was not optional. It was the recipe. It is simple, it's sacred, and almost nobody under 40 knows how to build it anymore. Number 24, sopa de fideo. Every Mexican-American kitchen kept a bag of those thin, coiled noodles in the pantry, and Abuela could turn them into a meal in 20 minutes flat. She broke a 5-cent bag of fideo into a hot pan with a spoon of manteca. She toasted it slowly, watching the strands turn copper, the way her own mother had watched the same pan in Michoacan back then. She poured in a tomato puree blended with garlic, onion, and a little caldo de pollo from a Knorr cube. The pot bubbled and thickened into something between soup and pasta. Kids ate it with a squeeze of lime and a spoon of crema. The thing is, sopa de fideo would get made on the days money was short and pride was long. It is an old comfort that you can't buy in a can. Number 23, arroz con leche. Your grandfather ate this every single morning for 40 years, and Abuela made it the same way every time. Long grain rice, whole milk, a stick of Mexican canela, a strip of lemon peel, sugar, and at the end, a fistful of plump raisins. She let the rice swell slowly on a low flame, stirring with a wooden spoon her own mother had brought from Guanajuato in 1948. The kitchen smelled like cinnamon and warm milk for the rest of the day. This dish was breakfast, dessert, and medicine all at once. When you were sick, she made it thinner. On a feast day, she made it richer with a can of la lechera. Abuelo was a quiet man, but he always finished his bowl. That bowl mattered more than anyone realized. Number 22, champurrado. Before there were coffee shops on every corner, Abuela woke at 5 a.m. and stirred this thick chocolate atole on a back burner. Masa harina, water, piloncillo, Mexican chocolate from an Ibarra disc, a stick of canela, and a star of anise. She whisked it with a wooden molinillo, the same way ancestors in Puebla had whisked it for centuries, until the surface foamed and the whole house smelled of toasted corn and chocolate. This drink fueled tamale mornings, posadas, and cold winter walks to school. Children held the warm clay mug with both hands. Old men drank it standing up. It is thick enough to coat a spoon and rich enough to feel like a meal. Today, most families reach for a packet of Nestle Coco. Back then, Abuela would have wept at that. Number 21, caldo de queso. This was a Sonoran soup Abuela in Tucson or Nogales, made with whatever was in the fridge by Tuesday night. Cubed potatoes, roasted green chile from the Hatch Valley in New Mexico, tomato, onion, garlic, milk, and a generous handful of shredded asadero or queso fresco stirred in at the last minute. The cheese melted in long strings through the broth, soft and almost creamy. She served it in deep enamel bowls with warm flour tortillas the size of dinner plates. Caldo de queso would feed a working family on a Tuesday for almost no money in 1962. It is warmth, it's protein, it's forgiveness in a bowl. Once frozen pizzas arrived in the late 1970s, the dish began to vanish from the table. That's a quiet loss. Number 20, calabacitas con queso. Late summer in any Mexican-American backyard meant calabacitas the size of your fist. Sweet corn from the husk, ripe tomatoes, and the soft green chile abuelo roasted on top of the burner. Abuela diced everything small, sautéed it in a little manteca, and at the end folded in a handful of queso fresco that melted into pillowy clouds. She served it as a side, as a taco filling, or spooned over hot rice. It tasted like the August garden of 1968. It was healthy, simple, and cheap. The kind of dish that proved abundance in the Bario did not need money. Kids who turned up their noses at vegetables ate this without complaint. Tia Lupe probably still keeps the same chipped Pyrex bowl she served it in. She still uses it. Number 19, homemade chile con queso. Long before the Velveeta era took over Tex-Mex in the late 1960s, Abuela in San Antonio or Laredo made queso from real cheese. She melted asadero or chihuahua in a heavy 10-inch skillet with a splash of evaporated milk. She folded in roasted poblano strips, tomato, onion, and sometimes a little chorizo crumbled on top. The result was creamy, smoky, and rich, with chili heat that built slow on your tongue. You scooped it up with warm flour tortillas torn from a stack she had pressed that morning. Then, in the 1970s, the orange brick took over. A block of Velveeta and a can of Rotel pushed the original off the table within a generation. The new one was easier. The old one was richer. Number 18, empanadas de calabaza. Every fall, Abuela roasted a whole calabaza de Castilla in the oven, scooped out the bright orange flesh, and mashed it with piloncillo, canela, clove, and a splash of milk. She rolled out a simple masa of flour, manteca, and a little anise water until it was thin enough to see through. She cut perfect circles with the rim of a tin cup, spooned in the warm pumpkin filling, and crimped the edges with a fork. She would fry them golden in a deep cast iron skillet that had been passed down in the family since 1942. The whole house smelled like a Mexican panaderia on a holiday morning. These empanadas would fill lunch pails, church potlucks, and Day of the Dead altars across South Texas and California. Most Mexican-American kids today only know the frozen kind from a tropical foods bag. Number 17, buñuelos navideños. Your grandmother's Christmas was not Christmas without a tower of these crackling, sugar-dusted discs cooling on a tablecloth in the dining room. She mixed flour, eggs, a touch of anise tea, baking powder, and a little manteca into a soft dough. She rolled small balls, then stretched each one over the back of an upside-down clay bowl until it was thin as paper, almost transparent. She fried them one at a time in deep oil, the edges curling like the petals of a giant flower. While they were still hot, she dusted them with cinnamon sugar or drizzled them with piloncillo syrup steeped with guava. The kitchen was loud with grandchildren and aunties, and the radio tuned to KCOR San Antonio or KWKW Los Angeles. She stood at the stove for 4 hours, never sat down, never ate one until everyone else had taken theirs. Buñuelos were patience made edible. They were the taste of every Christmas Eve you can still remember if you close your eyes. What most people forget today is the bowl trick. The thinness was the whole point. Most families now buy buñuelos flat and machine-made from a Cadenas market bag in December. The handmade tradition is mostly gone, kept alive in a few kitchens by women in their 70s. When they go, The recipe goes with them. Number 16. Pan de campo. Out on the South Texas ranches in the 1950s, your great-grandfather's vaquero ancestors baked this thick wheel of bread in a Dutch oven buried in mesquite coals. Flour, baking powder, salt, lard, and water. That was the list. The dough would be patted into a round, scored on top with a knife, and lowered into a 12-inch cast-iron pot with hot embers heaped on the lid. In 40 minutes, it came out golden, dense, slightly smoky, and strong enough to soak up a bowl of carne guisada without falling apart. Tejano families ate pan de campo with cabrito on Sunday afternoons under a mesquite tree from Brownsville to Eagle Pass. Your grandmother might still remember the smell of those coals. The grandchildren in the suburbs of Houston probably think bread comes from a plastic Mrs. Baird's bag. Number 15. Carne con chile colorado. This was the dish Abuelo requested on his birthday, and Abuela spent the whole afternoon making it from scratch. She toasted dried California and Guajillo chiles on a hot comal, soaked them in warm water, then blended them with garlic, onion, cumin, oregano, and a little vinegar into a smooth brick red sauce. She browned cubes of beef chuck in a heavy pot, poured the sauce over them, and let everything simmer for 2 hours until the meat fell apart at the touch of a spoon. The kitchen smelled of toasted chili and slow beef from morning to night. Here is the thing. This was not a quick dinner. It was the kind of meal that asked for a whole day, and she gave it because it told her husband he mattered. It said you are loved on a plate. It said you are remembered. Today, most cooks buy a $3 jar of red sauce off a Walmart shelf and pour it over store-bought meat. That works, but it is not the same. The dish Abuela made carried her hands inside it. The jar version doesn't. What most people miss is the toasting. The dried chiles need 30 seconds on a hot comal before any water touches them. That single step is what Abuela always did, and what almost no granddaughter does now. Most Mexican-American families have not tasted carne con chile colorado the old way. They never will. Number 14. Albondiga soup. Your grandmother made these meatballs out of ground beef, white rice, mint from the windowsill, garlic, and an egg. She rolled them small, about the size of a walnut, and dropped them gently into a simmering pot of caldo with carrots, potato, zucchini, and a little chipotle in adobo. The meatballs cooked slowly while the rice inside swelled and held everything together. The mint was the secret. It lifted the broth into something bright and almost medicinal, the kind of soup she fed you when you came home from school with a sore throat. Albondigas was a Sunday lunch in Boyle Heights, a quinceañera starter in Phoenix, and a Wednesday dinner in Albuquerque from 1958 onward. It crossed every regional line. Today, most Mexican-American kids only know meatballs from a Chef Boyardee can. Your grandmothers tasted nothing like that. They tasted like care. Number 13. Chicharrones en salsa verde. Your grandmother walked to the local carniceria on Olvera Street or Guadalupe Street, bought a fresh slab of pork chicharron still warm in the bag for $1.75, and brought it home wrapped in butcher paper. She blended tomatillos, serrano, garlic, and a fistful of cilantro into a bright green salsa, then simmered it on the stove until it deepened in color. She broke the chicharron into pieces and dropped it into the salsa. The pork puffed and softened in 5 minutes, soaking up the green like a sponge. She served it with hot corn tortillas and a smear of frijoles. It was breakfast in some houses, lunch in others, and a full dinner in the houses where money was tight that week in 1973. The simple version cost almost nothing and tasted like something rich. It is the kind of dish that has quietly slipped out of American kitchens. Number 12. Nopalitos en chile guajillo. In the backyards of Mexican-American homes across the Southwest in the 1960s, a single nopal cactus often grew against the fence. Your grandmother harvested the young pads with a pair of tongs and a kitchen knife. She scraped off the spines, diced the pads, and boiled them with a slice of onion until they turned tender and a little sticky. She rinsed them clean, then folded them into a sauce of toasted guajillo chili, garlic, and tomato. The result was tangy, earthy, and a beautiful red. She served it with eggs at breakfast or as a taco filling at lunch. Nopalitos were old medicine in Bario kitchens, healthy in a way nobody had to explain. Today, most home cooks buy them in a $4 jar from the La Costena shelf, or skip them entirely. The cactus by the fence still grows. Nobody picks it. Number 11. Tortitas de papa. When the meat budget ran out at the end of the month in 1968, Abuela turned a few potatoes into the dish that fed everybody and made it feel like a treat. She boiled the potatoes, peeled them, and mashed them with a fork while still warm. She mixed in chopped queso fresco, a little salt, and sometimes a spoon of chorizo if there was any in the fridge. She shaped them into small patties, dipped them in a fluffy beaten egg, and fried them golden in a hot cast iron skillet. While the tortitas drained on a paper bag, she made a quick caldillo of tomato, onion, garlic, and chile guajillo on the back burner. She slid the tortitas into the caldillo and let them soak up the sauce for 10 minutes. Then she served them with rice, beans, and a stack of warm tortillas. Here is what made this dish important. It taught a whole generation of Mexican-American kids that running out of meat money did not mean settling for less. Your grandmother could pull a feast out of 3 potatoes and a knob of queso. She did it without making anyone feel poor. She did it without complaint. She did it because that was her job and her dignity, and the kitchen was the one place in the world where she ruled without question. Tortitas de papa were her quiet proof that creativity beats money every time. What most people miss today is the double cook, frying first, then sauce. That step was everything. Most kids have never seen them made. They reach for a Kraft Mac and cheese box instead. The recipe for tortitas walked out the door with the women who would make them on Thursday nights when the fridge was almost empty. Number 10. Mexican rice with achiote. Long before the orange-tinted rice in restaurant baskets became the standard in the 1990s, Abuela tinted her rice with achiote paste, the brick-red seed paste from the Yucatecan tradition that goes back centuries. She toasted long-grain rice in a little manteca until each grain was lightly golden. She blended tomato, onion, garlic, and a small spoon of El Yucateco achiote with hot caldo. She poured the liquid over the toasted rice, covered the pot, and let it cook untouched for 20 minutes. The result was a deeper, earthier red than any tomato sauce alone could make. Each grain stood separate, glossy and rich. It tasted of the earth and the sun and 3,000 years of Mesoamerican kitchens. The boxed yellow rice in the grocery store today is a thin imitation. Most Mexican-American kids will never know the difference. Number 9. Tamales de dulce. The day somebody died, the women of the family gathered in Abuela's kitchen and made these sweet tamales, the way her own great-aunt had taught her back then in 1939. Pink masa tinted with a few drops of food coloring, sweetened with sugar, and a little canela, studded with raisins and tiny cubes of pineapple from a can of dole. They wrapped each one in a softened corn husk, folded the ends, tied them with a thin strip of husk, and stacked them upright in a tall steamer pot. 3 hours of slow steam later, the masa was light and tender, sweet in a way that did not push. They were served with café de olla in small clay cups while the family sat together and remembered the person who was gone. These were not party tamales. They were grief tamales, comfort tamales, the food that traveled with you through the hardest days. Your grandmother made the savory ones too, the pork tamales, the chicken in green sauce, the rajas con queso. But the dulces were the ones that meant something deeper. They were the ones she made when she did not know what else to do with her hands. Most Mexican-American families today only eat tamales at Christmas, and almost always the savory kind from the lady down the street. The pink dulces have quietly slipped away. The abuelas who would tie them upright in the pot are mostly gone. Their granddaughters live too busy to spend a whole afternoon over a steamer. The recipe is still possible. The patience is what has disappeared. Number 8. Mole de olla. This was Abuela's everyday mole, not the dark, layered Oaxacan kind that takes 2 days. It was a brothy, brick-red soup of beef shank, xoconosl, corn on the cob, calabachitas, chayote, and ayotes, all swimming in a chili and tomato caldo with a sprig of epazote on top. She started it at 9 a.m. and let it simmer until late afternoon. The smell alone could pull a tired husband through the front door faster than any car horn. She served it deep in clay bowls with a wedge of lime, raw white onion, and a stack of warm tortillas from a Guerrero pack. It is simple, healthy, and rich. It is the meal that proved you did not need 50 ingredients to feed a family beautifully. Today, most Mexican-American families have not tasted the original. They reach for jarred Dona Maria mole paste from a corner bodega. Number 7. Polvorones de canela. These were the cinnamon shortbread cookies Abuela made for first communions, baptisms, and quinceañeras. Flour, manteca, powdered sugar, a little vanilla, and a generous dust of canela. She worked the dough with her hands until it was rich and pillowy. She rolled small balls, pressed them flat with her palm, and arranged them on a baking sheet she had used for decades since 1959. They baked for 15 minutes until just barely golden at the edges. While they were still warm, she rolled them in a bowl of cinnamon sugar until each one was perfectly coated. They melted on your tongue and crumbled on your shirt and tasted like every important Sunday of your childhood. They sat in a mota tin with a Mexican rooster painted on the lid, on top of the refrigerator, where Abuela could pretend she did not see you climb the chair to steal one. She always saw. She always pretended not to. Polvorones are still made by some abuelas in some kitchens. The tin on top of the refrigerator is mostly gone. Number 6. Pastel de tres leches. Long before this cake exploded onto every American restaurant menu in the late 1990s, Abuela in San Antonio or Fresno was making the original at home for birthdays and anniversaries. A simple white sponge cake, baked in a 9x13 Pyrex pan, then poked all over with a fork and slowly drowned in 3 milks. Sweetened condensed from a La Lechera can, evaporated milk from a Carnation can, and a splash of heavy cream. She let it sit in the fridge overnight so the cake could drink up every drop. She topped it with whipped cream, sometimes a sprinkle of canela, sometimes a few sliced strawberries. It was the cake that meant something special was happening in the family. The thing is, the version you get in restaurants today is heavy and overloaded. Your grandmother's was lighter, simpler, and somehow richer because she made it for you. That's a difference no recipe card has ever captured. Number 5. Picadillo. This was the meal Abuela could pull together in 30 minutes on a Tuesday with whatever was in the fridge. Ground beef browned with onion and garlic, then thickened with diced potato, carrot, raisin, green olive, and a tomato sauce gentle with cumin and a little canela. The combination of sweet, salty, and warm tasted like nothing else. She served it as a taco filling, as a stuffing for chiles rellenos, or with rice and beans on a chipped Corel plate from a 1972 wedding set. Kids in San Antonio, Phoenix, and East LA ate it for decades and never got tired of it. Picadillo is the kind of meal that disappeared because it was easy to replace with frozen burritos and hamburger helper in the early 1980s. Your grandmother kept making it anyway. Once she stopped, the recipe walked out the door with her. Number 4. sopa seca de fideos. This was the dry pasta dish that fed Mexican-American families when soup felt too thin and rice felt too plain in the 1970s. Your grandmother toasted fideos in a hot 10-inch skillet with a little manteca until they turned a beautiful copper. She blended fresh tomato with onion, garlic, and a small chile chipotle, then poured the puree over the noodles. She let everything simmer just until the liquid had been absorbed and the pasta was tender. She topped it with crumbled queso fresco, a spoon of crema from a la vaquita tub, sliced avocado, and chopped cilantro. It was a side, a main, a school lunch reheated, and a midnight snack all at once. Sopa seca proved Mexican kitchens had been making baked pasta long before any American food magazine claimed it as a trend in the 2000s. The leftovers were better than the original. Most Mexican-American kids today have never had it. Number 3. Frijoles refritos in lard. This was the breakfast Abuelo ate every single morning for 40 years, and Abuela made it the same way every time. She started with a pot of pinto beans simmered the day before with a little onion, garlic, and an epazote leaf. In the morning, she heated a generous spoon of fresh manteca in a hot 12-inch skillet until it shimmered. She mashed the cooked beans into the lard with a wooden potato masher. Slowly, watching the color deepen from speckled brown to a rich, glossy bronze. She added a little of the bean broth as she worked, then a fistful of crumbled queso, fresco. The smell pulled the whole house out of bed by 6 a.m. She served them on a warm corn tortilla with a fried egg and a smear of salsa roja. It was simple, it was cheap, and it was the kind of breakfast that built 3 generations of Mexican-American working men. Today, most families use canned La Costena refried beans heated up in the microwave. Those work fine, but they've never tasted like Abuela's. The lard is the secret. The patience is the second secret. There's no shortcut. What most people miss today is the masher. A blender or a spoon won't give you that texture. You need wood, time, and your wrist. Your grandmother knew that. She made it the same way for 40 years because the right way had already been found decades earlier, and there was nothing left to improve. Most Mexican-American kitchens today have replaced the manteca with vegetable oil and the pot with a can. The flavor's gone. Your grandfather would smell the difference before he sat down. Number 2. Conchas. Long before there was a panaderia in every Mexican-American neighborhood, Abuela baked her own sweet rolls at home on the first Saturday of every month. The shells were a soft yeast bread brushed with an egg wash and topped with a paste of flour, sugar, and manteca, scored with a knife in the classic shell pattern. She made them in 3 colors: white vanilla, yellow citrus, and pink rose. They came out of the oven puffed and golden, smelling of butter and sugar, and the family ate them with a tall glass of café con leche. In the late 1970s and 1980s, big chain bakeries like El Gallo and Tres Hermanos opened in every barrio, and the homemade conchas vanished within a generation. The store-bought ones are good. Your grandmothers were richer. Nobody in the family bakes them on Saturday mornings anymore. Number 1. Café de olla. This was the drink that ended every family meal in Abuela's house in 1965. And it was nothing like the coffee anyone makes today. She set a clay olla on the back burner, added water, a thick disc of piloncillo, a stick of canela, 2 cloves, and a strip of orange peel. She brought it to a slow boil, stirred in coarse ground coffee, and pulled it off the heat after 4 minutes. She strained it into small clay cups and passed them around the table. The coffee was dark, sweet, faintly spicy, and somehow soft in a way no espresso machine has ever matched. It tasted like every Sunday afternoon, every family gathering, every sobremesa that lasted 3 hours after the plates were cleared. Today, your grandchildren reach for a cardboard cup from a Starbucks drive-thru. They've never tasted a real café de olla. The clay olla on Abuela's stove is gone. The recipe is not. Every Saturday before sunrise, the same pot was set on the same stove in kitchens from El Paso to East LA. Most of those stoves have gone cold. The aprons are folded in a drawer. The abuelas who stirred those pots without a single recipe card are mostly gone, and the recipes have walked out the door behind them. These 25 dishes are still possible to make. They're not lost yet. The clay ollas, the cast iron skillets, the canela sticks, the bags of masa harina, the cans of la lechera. They're all still on the shelf at the carniceria down the street. What's missing is the woman who would know what to do with them. You can be that person now.